Hi, my name is Sherry Danzig, and I'd like to welcome you all for what we consider a very, very important issue for this island. Now, we are fortunate enough to have Dr. Sattler, who will be introduced by Mary Jane, our fire departments, which I know I owe a lot to, and for me, a lot of putting this together is the concern of what's around us on this island. As we walk around, there's a tremendous amount of dead wood, there's a tremendous amount of wind. We have all the hazards which present itself as California. So what I want to do is educate the public, educate myself to best prevent a disaster from happening. What we can do to mitigate it around our own homes, what we can do to support our fire department, find out what they need. And this is working not just on the conservation properties, which we've all walked through, we all know need some attention. Also what we can do on our own properties. So not to take up time, turning this over to professionals.
Good evening. Dr. Sattler is a professor at the University of San Francisco and an international leader in environmental health and nursing. She's a founding and active member of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, an international organization, that is helping to integrate environmental health into nursing education, practice, research, and policy. I shortened this. Dr. Sattler has worked at local level communities facing environmental health risks associated with lead-based paint, pesticides, Superfund sites, and risks associated with gas, oil extraction, and fracking. Dr. Sattler has been a recipient of many federal grants and private grants. She has developed and teaches an immersion course about fire, and the curriculum was gleaned from the community she works in, for members, fire chiefs, fire victims, and religious organizations. She is an author of Environmental Health and Nursing, has many peer-reviewed articles, is a registered nurse with a Master's in Public Health, a Doctorate in Public Health from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, and she is a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing. Please give a warm welcome to our friend and colleague, Mary.
I'm honored to be here, and I'm particularly honored to be sharing the podium here with folks who are from the fire service, the sort of big brother and sisterhood of the fire service, who we consider our biggest heroes on the West Coast, and I'm sure you do too. So I started to do disaster relief when Katrina happened. I was at the University of Maryland. Our governor was called by the governor of Mississippi, who said we need help. I went down there and did Katrina relief. That was the very first time I did anything having to do with disasters. Really didn't do much in between. I went to California in 2012, and we've been having some fires out there, which you've probably heard of. And I live in Sonoma County, which is where we've really been having some fires. So this is really based on my experience, and also I teach a course in disaster preparation for graduate students. So just I'm really on a journey to best understand how we're doing things, what we continue to learn, and hopefully what I impart today will be of help here. And I'd love to continue the conversation with you because you'll be learning things that you can share back with us, not necessarily because you're going to have a fire. So first, I just wanted to know, what's going on here. You have a bunch of stuff going on. So you have emergency service set of organizations that do have some ways in which they're working with each other. And so you're absolutely not starting from scratch here. You have 3 big organizations that do emergency response. This is usually after the fact as opposed to preventive. I'm going to talk a lot about prevention and what we do prior to having an event. So you've got American Cross, Red Cross here, the Salvation Army, and Medical Reserves Corps, all who have training and have really good abilities to respond when there is an emergency of all sorts. It might be just an individual house that's on fire, it might be a flood. I don't think they come out for cats up trees, but they do help and come out to the community in a variety of ways. This is also, you've got Martha's Vineyard Disaster Animal Response Team. Anybody here on any of these organizations? So just one hand up. So You've got a lot of buddies to invite to your meetings in the future or go to their meetings. I also saw that, if you see the green arrow, September 25th, 2019, the Martha's Vineyard Community Emergency Response Team was holding a training. So you've got those folks who are active here as well. Just want you to know that there is a lot going on here that could be not just plugged into, but plugged together with your interest and concerns so that you're working in a way that is more coordinated. So where to start? How many of you have a go bag? Okay, 3 prizes in the room. The rest of you, not so much. You need to have a go bag. And everybody in your household needs to have a go bag. And your dog needs to have a go bag. So, and your cat. Any animal you're going to take in the car, you have to have a go bag for. And so, I am not going to tell you what to put in your go bag. If you just look up go bags or Ready, Set, Go, there are a bunch of different websites, and I'll have some of this on here. And any of you who signed in with your email will send you my whole PowerPoint. So you'll have the PowerPoint with all the links to the website so you can, for those of you who are interested after this, finding any more information. You should have batteries in your go bag for any piece of equipment that you're going to be taking with you, and also your cords so you can plug it in to wherever you might be going, and a radio that you can play using batteries. Your cell phone as a radio maybe or maybe won't work, and I'll talk about that in just a second. This, I don't expect you to read all this. I just want you to know that you also need to have a list of all your important documents. You need to have we had banks that burned, and so those are not the only place for your safe and important materials. This is a whole list of things, some of which you may think about, some of which you haven't thought about. So you can find this list, and I'll show you the link to where you can find that. One of the things, one of my really good friends, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and she elbowed her husband and said, "Walter, you left lights outside on." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And he looked up, they opened the curtain, the fires were right there. They got the 2 dogs, they got into their they had 2 cars, they left the Maserati, what's wrong with these people? Burned to a crisp. He got it for his 70th birthday, he had had it 2 months. And they're well-to-do, they lived on a beautiful piece of property, and they had just redone their whole kitchen. Anyway, they got the 2 dogs, and they went down the hill, and they were chased by that fire, and I know a lot of you saw footage. Truly, it was chasing people. So what we learned from Walter and Sharon, those are our friends' names, they came to dinner. They were at dinner at our house, and I was doing something with a mixer or something, I don't know, and she said, "Oh, Walter, I didn't put the mixer on the list." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "We have to have a list of every single thing that we're going to get insurance for. And if it's not on the list, we're not getting insurance for it." So what you need to do now is you need to photograph every single thing. If you've got a really nice wood shop, make sure you've got pictures and stuff that's in your garage. If you've got nice outdoor furniture, make sure you've got pictures of that. You want to take pictures. You want to open your drawers. You want to take pictures of the clothing in your drawer. And I'm telling you this from the experience of people who have been battling with insurance companies for a long time. So, other things that you can do, and this is one of the links you can go to, creating your own home inventory. It will tell you how to do that. It will tell you how to inventory those important papers that I described before. That was such a small print, I'm sure you couldn't read them in the back, but you will find that list here. So what is your plan? Have you all got a plan? Do you have a plan for when you have regular visits by your grandchildren? Are they included in the plan? Do they know what the plan is? So you need to know how you're going to exit your home. And then you need to know what route you're going to get on to get to a safer place based on what you are learning about where the fire is. And then you need to know what an alternative route is. So what happened in my town, this was for the 2017 fires, we got a mandatory evacuation call. We went into, I live in a little town of 3,000 people, kind of rural part of West Sonoma County, and we were told we needed to evacuate. Well, we went in towards town. It's the only road of egress out to the ocean, and it was complete traffic jam because people were trying to get gas. We had one gas station. It bollocks up traffic entirely. So making sure that you always have at least a half, and this is a little tiny island, so I don't know how far you can go, but at least have a tank of gas you should have in at all times so that you're not going to be looking down and going, oh my God, I'm going to get out of gas before I get out of the fire. So know your alternative routes. Know the informal ones. I don't know your island. Are there fire roads on your island? Sometimes they can be alternative routes. So really understanding those and mapping out what your main route and what your alternative route would be. Also, then I took a picture from the web. That's on Martha's Vineyard down there in the bottom right. Where is it?
Menasha.
Well, wherever Menasha is, I just took a picture so that you would know. You come up with what gathering sites you should have for family members that may not be in the household when you are evacuating. You also, if you're on the second floor, or you've got bedrooms on the second floor and there is only one stairwell, which is true of most houses, you need to think about how you're going to get down from that second floor. So just things like that, and I'm sure the firefighters in the back are going, yeah, that's a good idea, just some of these things. So also, if you've got, are there horses and cows over there? Actually, I don't know. Apologies. We have lots of horses and cows where I am. What happened is the minute the fires started happening, and they were happening to the east of us, is all the farmers and ranchers to the left, to the west of us, they put their trailers on the back of their pickup trucks, and they went to where the fires were, and they started gathering. There was no, they self-organized. They started gathering people's beef cows, they started gathering people's horses. The state fairground at one point had over 1,000 horses that they were just sheltering, that people had gotten off the area. So having a plan for large animals, obviously your smaller pets go in the car and they go with you. The Red Cross now allows pets in shelters, unless you have a dog that's going to be observably aggressive. There's no question asked. That's a new philosophy of the Red Cross since Katrina. When people refuse to go into shelters, they'd rather stay out in the rain with their dogs than go into shelters. So cell phones may be down for two reasons. Your cell towers, I'm trying to go fast because my talk is actually more than time I was given because I was told I had a little more time, so sorry if I'm talking too fast for you. But cell towers may be down because they're on fire or they fell down, or now, I don't know whether this happens here, but we have the power to, not we, but the emergency services has the power to, and they do this by magic because I don't understand it, but to supersede and get in line sooner than people who are not in emergency services. They get bumped up, so their communication is going to go through before our communication. So that's what, and good for that, right? We want that to happen.
Or take the time you need.
Oh, I saw that. Talk so
Take the
fast.
time you need.
Okay. So I do not expect you to read this either. I just want you to know that readyforwildfire.org is an amazingly informative website with all kinds of information, some of which I think borrowed and stole here. This one is specifically for a parent's guide for safety for babies and toddlers. So there are particular things you may want to think about there. Planning together as a family, Smoky Kids, different materials so that you can present information to children without frightening them and yet preparing them. And yet engaging them in what they will need to do in the, we hope not, but in the event that you do have a fire. So all kinds of great, there's also on their site what you should do for seniors in your community and others. So other things, and I was talking to the gentleman in the back, I think here, about Nixle. Can somebody here from one of the emergency services tell me whether you use Nixle here? everybody knows. So NIXL is a national emergency alert system. And so this is a question that those of you who live here need to figure out. What is the alert system that is used on the island? This is really important.
Code red.
Go red?
Code red.
Code red. And does everybody here know how to hook up with Code Red on their iPhone?
No.
No. So maybe the person who's speaking after me can just say a little bit of how you engage in your iPhone or smartphone in Code Red so you can get that information. First grabs. So during our first fire, we're on the equivalent of standby to get evacuated. I'm going through the house like a mad woman. We have a little RV. I'm like, we're going with the RV. If anything happens to our house, we're traveling with a little house, and that's what we're living in. I'm thinking like a woman, just so you know. I'm grabbing photographs. I'm grabbing my kids. My kids are in their 30s, right? My kids' artwork, they're on the wall. I'm grabbing my favorite scarf because I have a little time, right? Okay. I've got the RV full at this point and pointed out. We're ready for mandatory evacuation. I say, Chris, I asked him, what you got? He said, I have socks and underwear. So, you might want to, you get it? He's thinking like a man. That's all he really needs, right? We could be evacuated for the rest of our lives, and he's got socks and underwear. So, what I want you to think about is what are you going to grab in terms of valuables? You've got your go bag. You've got your financial emergency kit, with all those papers. What else is really important in your house? And so it's something for you to think about, because that may be all you have to grab, or not even that. So financial first aid kit, that website that I gave you will help you to identify all the things that you should have. Also, you should right now have everything on your computer backed up. I cannot reinvent my grandmother's apple cake. It was like my favorite dessert she made, because I never wrote that down. If you've got recipes on little pieces of paper in your kitchen somewhere, take a photo on your iPhone, take that with you. Or those are just the kinds of things that once you lose those, that's it. They're gone. And so get involved with your neighbors, not just neighborhood groups, but your neighbors. And so you say, but I don't know my neighbors. Well, this is one program I want you to know about, because I've known bunches of people now who have done it. It's called Cool Block. And it's a way that you can intentionally gather your neighbors and, among other things, develop a strategy for how you're going to deal with a disaster. And the little group on the right there, the woman on the left is another nurse. Her name is Lisa Hartmeyer. She did it in her community in San Francisco. And they didn't know all their neighbors. They saw them when they're putting the garbage out or whatever, but they didn't know them. This process help them to know who lived in the houses on their whole block, who had a mobility issue, who didn't speak English as a first language, things that might have hindered them from being able to take care of themselves, as well as everybody would like to take care of themselves in an emergency. And they became just a cohesive unit, just their block. So here I know you're not an urban area, so maybe your block is a slightly bigger spot, but I do want to really encourage you to know who lives on your whole lane, because it may be that you'll be a lifesaver for them when something happens and you know about an alert, but they would not have. So I think the next speaker is going to be talking a little bit more about defensible space. We have a lot of information about how to make your home safer, maybe not 100% safe, but safer in ways that you manage the ground, the propane tanks, the various things that are immediately around your property. And so if you want to go readyforwildfire.org, there's a whole page with very specific information here. This would be a wonderful training to do with all the landscapers and garden workers on the island. For you to bring in those folks and have somebody talk about defensible space, and anybody else here who is a gardener does that kind of work also. On that same page, or that same website, you'll also find out what are the different products that you can use on your roof if you're going to put a new roof in, or your deck, or the paints that you're going to use that are going to help your home be what's called hardened, meaning that it is going to be a little bit more fire retardant than perhaps all of these incredibly beautiful wooden homes with shaker shingles are right now here. And the same is true with fire-resistant landscaping. I'm going to show you in a second. And the last is, do you have your power lines above ground here?
Mostly.
Mostly, yes? Yeah, it's a huge issue for us in California. So we've been doing, you may or may not have been hearing, we've been doing rolling blackouts, because when we get big wind, they go down, they spark, they start fires. That was a big issue in the Tubbs fire, plus we had 70, 80, 90 mile an hour winds, didn't help at all. So getting, whenever possible, getting those power lines underground. I know in California there's serious bond issues that are being considered right now to put those power lines underground. So in terms of fire-resistant plants, these lovelies are, in my area, these are plants that are actually fire-resistant. So you can have a beautiful garden. It doesn't mean, I know when I said defensible space, and when I first heard it, I'm thinking, I don't want to just have dirt all around my house. That's no fun, right? So there are plants that you can, including lavender and coreopsis, which you probably have in your gardens. These are fire resistant. Now, once again, it's resistant. Will they burn if you've got a fire out of control? Sure, they're going to probably melt. But why not try these in your garden versus, other plants that you may have that are going to be more flammable. So, being ready. I was going to do an exercise with you. I'm going to tell you the exercise I was going to do, and I thought I had more time. These are vulnerable populations. We need, whether we're in Sonoma County or on Martha's Vineyard, we need to know where these people are and how we are going to take care of them. They include people in skilled nursing facilities, the frail elderly who are still living at home, children, pets, and agricultural animals, homeless people, big issue for us, people who are hearing and visually impaired, people with developmental disabilities, pregnant women. When I did Katrina relief, we had a whole shelter that was for very pregnant women and women who had newborns. We culled them from the herd and had a separate shelter just for those folks. I was with a group, we were taking care of 20,000 sheltered people in Mississippi for Katrina. So I think it's more population than home Martha's Vineyard right now, right?
Yes.
And we were taking care of them in 2 towns. So people with mobility issues, chronic diseases, in your go bag, the first thing you put in your go bag is your medication or extra medication. It is the one thing that we ran into with people in shelters. I don't have my insulin, I don't have my antipsychotic drugs, I don't have my blood pressure drugs. You want to have those drugs with you. Just like when you're on a plane, if they tell you, do you have your meds, you don't want to put them in the belly of the plane because God knows where that package or luggage is going to go. So what are you going to do if somebody is in active IV addiction? And now you've got to shelter them or figure out what to do with them. And people with severe mental illness. Everybody is going to be deer in the headlights when this is going on. Everybody. But I'm talking with somebody who is actually having a psychiatric break over this. People who are non-English speakers, more important for where I live than perhaps here, because I looked at your demographics and you don't have a lot of folks that speak other languages as their first language or only language. And first responders. First responders become vulnerable populations after their first 36, 48, 72 hours of working. We've got to make sure that we've got contingencies for how we take care of all of ourselves. This is a problem that I don't know what you do with, and this is going to take some real creativity. You've got a whole bunch of people that just mosey on out here. So they're not going to be part of the folks here who know what you're doing because you're going to be so prepared and so ready. So what might you want to do? What information through Airbnb or VRBO do you want to leave with folks? What kind of messages and information do you want people who are going to be coming onto the island just for the day or for the week? And once again, this would require a committee. Think through it. How do you leverage each other's resources for this? So practice drills. Practice how you're going to coordinate between the police, the fire, you have one hospital here, right? Your hospital and emergency room. How are you going to communicate with each other? Practicing is the best way for you to learn where your vulnerabilities are in your organization and processes. And so, variety of things. The practice that they're doing in the upper right is somebody went into early labor because they were so upset, didn't expect to be in labor. They're from off island. Now they're on island and they're in a state because they're in transition and about to have a baby, right? So what are you going to do there? So our fires, people often don't know this, but in most of California, from about May to October, we get no rain. Not a little rain, we get no rain. So by the end of October, we are parched dry. And sometimes what we get around this time of year, actually right about now is when we should get the rains. But up until now, if we also get winds and really hot days in a row, we are just so ready for backfires. We are just so ready. So hence 2 weeks ago, we had another one. So the top right, that was Kaiser Hospital being evacuated while the east wall, had flames going up it. They had fortunately practiced and understood what they had to do. They didn't have time to do the things they practiced. They were literally throwing patients into nurses' cars and other people's cars. This is an ICU patient that is being run down the road here. So what happens if your hospital goes on fire here? Just a question, because it's not unheard of, just so you know. The Kincaid fire, which was a couple of weeks ago, Sattler Hospital precautionarily evacuated. Fortunately, they did not burn, but during the Tubbs fire, both Sattler Hospital and Kaiser Hospital were being evacuated as the flames were getting close to them. The other thing in this, for the Incident Command Center for Sonoma County, I've spent a little time with the gentleman who was the commander there, and the fires were lapping at the door. And it was his call to stay there versus they had already moved the Incident Command Center once. He decided to stay put. It wound up being fortunate for everybody, the right call. But sometimes the Incident Command Centers have to literally move. That was because that fire was just so completely out of control. This is Coffey Park on the bottom, and they are still struggling. This was October 2017. I would say about 2/3 of the homes have been rebuilt. The others are still under construction. So that's a long time for people to be without their homes. This is the incident command structure. I'm not going to test you on any of this, but just so that you know, there's an incredibly organized way in which emergency services operate, how they communicate, and how they interface and get things done. And so, incredible respect for our emergency services. They practice, they drill, they know how to do this stuff. They're well orchestrated, like a beautiful ballet in some ways. So now we're getting to evacuating, some information on evacuation. Err on the side of leaving early. Traffic will happen. I don't know whether they showed any pictures of what was happening with traffic this last time. We had